charger. It's pretty charged right now. Okay, but hello. Last we left off, Kyoshi told the other Delphi that she was the Avatar. They didn't believe her, and then she had to do some stuff in order to prove it. And now they're just like, okay, we can teach you. And then they're teaching her how to do stuff. Yeah. Yeah, they're teaching her. And yeah. Alright. Ow, 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 fuck. Okay. Alrighty. So now, this next chapter is called, hold on, sorry. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, so this next chapter, oh, also one more thing. We're getting more information about Lagu. Yeah, Lagu, and it seems like he is very, very old. Yeah, I don't know what he is exactly, but he's very, very old. And the mission that the Flying Opera Company is trying to do is save one of Mock's friends from a prison. And Lagu's just like, oh, why don't you come with me during the plan and we kill the governor. And Kyoshi's just like, what? And this is to test her. Oh yeah, to test her, to see if she's really about killing Jianzu. This is gonna be her first test. Okay. Oh shit. Hold on. I keep on forgetting the last couple sessions I didn't read with my glasses. I've been trying to read with my glasses at least. Okay. Alright. So now, the next chapter we're going to go to is called conclusions. Sorry about all the fucking noise. I know, it's annoying. Okay. So yes. Chapter whatever. Conclusions. Sorry, I got all sleepy. But yes, conclusions. Jiangsu had learned his lesson. No caravans, no roads. As soon as he received the message from the Shersha tracker team delivered by Hawk, he had gone through the enormous, preposterous expense of buying rare. Eel hounds, the fastest cross-country mounts besides the flying bison, a whole herd of them. In the annals of the Earth Kingdom, ancient nomadic barbarians had traveled great distances, surprising foot slogging. Ancient nomadic barbarians had traveled great distances, surprising foot-slogging armies with such tactics. A single rider would bring multiple mounts on a journey, and switching between them to fly on the keep. Hold on, sorry, I'm reading weird. Also, I'm trying to get my feet to stay where they are. Yeah, a single rider would bring multiple mounts on the journey, switching between them on the fly to keep the animals as fresh as speedy as possible. From the ranks of his newly replenished guardsmen, he'd chosen two on the basis of their riding ability, and set out with 8 eel hounds between them. They'd been told as little as possible, but from his urgency, it was easy to guess that their quest was important. They reached the mountains of Ba Sing Se in astonishing time, with barely a witness to mark their passing. Early on, one mount had broken its leg in a slinging groundhog's hole and needed to be put down. Another died from exhaustion on the far shore of West Lake. But other than that, the constant, mindless riding, the wind in his hair, had been good for Jianzu's spirit. As much as he missed Heiran's company, he needed the occasional freedom of her watchful gaze. The party had brought more messenger hawks with their baggage, carefully caged and hooded. Jianzu had promised to send word to her as soon as possible. The location where he was set to meet the trackers was a small trailhead leading into the foothills of the southern Taihua Range. The gentle slope of grassy green knolls was punctured by rows of redstone crags jutting upward, uniformly following the same angle and grain. The rocks were as tall and numerous as the trees in the forest. Jianzu saw a lone figure. Jianzu saw a lone figure in the middle of the stones, waving them over, and frowned. The message had brought him here with such a hurry. Hold on. Jianzu saw a lone figure in the middle of the stones, waving them over, and frowned. The message that had brought him here in such a hurry had explained, with overflowing apologies, that the Shersha had followed the scent trail to these mountains. Right before they'd lost control of the animal, it had escaped and run up the peaks in pursuit of its prey. For all he knew, it might have eaten the Avatar. Well, yeah, those things are fucking. They're crazy. The handlers must have been. The handlers must have drawn lots to see which one would face his wrath in person, while the rest looked for the Shirsha. He spurred his hound. He spurred his hound toward the unlucky representative. The man's waving. The man's waving was stiff and forced, like the motion of a water wheel. You can stop, Jianzu called out. I see you. A whistle and then thump. The lone tracker keeled over, 2 arrows in his back. Jianzu cursed and leaped out of his mount, more arrows crossing the air above his saddle. He tended slabs of earth around him and hunkered down in his cover, listening to the thunks of projectiles landing above him. I am getting much too old for this. He never would have fallen for such an obvious trap in his younger days. There was a pause in firing. He chambered his fists and punched outward. The slabs that had protected him now splintered and flew onward in all directions like shrapnel. Shrapnel. Yeah, like shrapnel. Sorry, I know this word, but I've never seen it spelled. I've never seen it in word form, like written. Shrapnel. I want to say shrapnel, but it's shrapnel. It's just spelled weird. But yes, the slabs that had protected him now splintered and flew outward in all directions like shrapnel from a bombard. He heard screams above. He heard screams from the rocks above. Taking in his surroundings as quickly as possible, he saw a few archers who'd fallen in their perches, lying at the base of the crags. But better safe than sorry. He lowered his stance, shook his waist, and whirled his arms. From base to top, every stone he could see violently sprouted thin spikes the size of geons, like they'd instantly transformed into the same pieces of like they'd instantly transformed into the same species of sea wong cactus. He heard more screams from the archers who remained hidden in their cover behind the rocks. That should have been it for elevated opponents. Fighters who fancied themselves professionals, but weren't, often made the mistake of taking the high ground without planning a way out. His eel hound had run off, but 2 of them were still nearby, tethered by their reins to a heavy weight. The corpse of one of the guardsmen, studded with arrows. The reins had snagged on his wrist. Good job, whatever your name was, Jianzu thought. The other guardsman was busy wiping blood off his dowel with a hank of grass. 3 attackers lay at his feet. They charged him with melee weapons and bizarre ones at that. Jianzu thought he spotted an abacus? Abacus? Hold on. Where is my phone? Okay. Yeah, where the heck are you, phone? Okay. Yeah, what the fuck? What happened to my phone? There you are. Hold on, I need to know how to say this word right. Oh. Yeah. Abacus. Yeah, Abacus is the, uh, is a mathematical tool. Hold on. But I'm pretty sure I'm saying it right. Abacus. No, I don't need that. Yeah, this is what it looks like. Ah, crap. I just went to the fucking... to the link. You were typing something. I saw you. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Yeah, it's that thing. Abacus. There we go. I couldn't describe it to you. It was too difficult for my brain right now. But yes. Yeah, three attackers lay at his feet. They charged him with melee weapons and bizarre ones at that. Jianzu thought he spotted an abacus made of iron on the ground. He was still impressed. Yeah, he was still impressed. What do they call you, son? The guardsman snapped to attention and stared above Jianzu's head with youthful, bright eyes. He had the strong brow of Eastern Peninsula ancestry. Saifu, sir. It was likely Saifu didn't understand how close of a call this was. Talent would only let you survive so many encounters. After that, the odds tended to catch up with a vengeance. Excellent work, Saifu. There's always opportunity for a quick blade on my staff. I'll remember this. The young guardsman kept his thrill contained at best he could. Thank you, sir. Jianzu nodded a body. Yeah. What? What did I say? What? Not nodded. Jianzu nudged a body onto its back. The dead man was clothed in the standard attire of a bandit, in the sense that he wore whatever peasant clothing he'd taken from him from his last legitimate occupation. This one had the trousers of a sailor or a sailmaker, mended repeatedly with fine sewing skill. But there was an odd detail on his shirt. He'd stuck a flower in his lapel. It was too ruined to see what kind. Jianzu checked another body. It had no decoration on its person, but he backtracked along the path the men had charged and found what he was looking for on the ground. A dried moon peach blossom. A badge, Jianzu thought with some vehemence. He straightened up and looked around. The mountains loomed nearby. They were said to be uninhabited, practically impassable. Yet these men weren't clothed for an expedition. With a sudden burst of energy, he slammed his palm against the ground. Tremors rang through the earth, spreading spreading wide like ripples in a pond. Sir, are you searching for something underground? Saifu asked. Maybe, Jianzu said, his attention skimming over the grass. Though, what I'm doing right now is preserving their footsteps. He continued along the trail left by Saifu's opponents, watching the indentations they made with their heels and toes in the dirt, examining where they left mud on grass. A long time ago, he tracked criminals down in such a way by listening to the earth and reading its marks. The prints, in reverse, led to a clearing with a conspicuous gray rock the size of a chair. Jianzu waved it away with a brush of his hand. Underneath was a wooden trapdoor. A hidden passage? Saifu asked. Jianzu nodded grimly. Hidden passage. Through the mountains. Sir, is this town supposed to be here? Saifu said. No, Jianzu said, his teeth grinding together. Though he couldn't see underground, knowing the tunnel was there allowed Jianzu to make various educated guesses with earthbending and knowledge of stonework to determine a path. They had followed the network up to a mountain on their They had followed the network up the mountains on their eel hounds, forcing aside block passages and relying on the agility of their unusual mounts to see them through. Eventually, the obstacles parted to reveal a great crater. The obstacles parted to reveal a great crater nestled in the heights, and in that bowl, waiting for them, was a village that neither of them had ever heard before. An entire settlement not on any map, out of reach of the law. Jianzu's rage was almost too great for him to swallow. He was a storekeeper who would never be rid of vermin, a servant who would never be able to polish the silver clean. The town appeared to be abandoned. They rode through empty streets between long houses that made a mockery of four nations, with adornments either looted or cruelly imitated from their places of origin. One particular scrap-quilted banner had been fastened together so that characters from multiple signs clumsily formed the syllables Hu and Xiang. Huxiang. So that was the name of this dung heap. There's our Shirshu, sir. Or Shirsha? No, I think it's Shirshu. There's our Shirsha. Shirsha or Shirshu? No, it's Shu. Yeah. There's our Shirshu, sir. Saifu said. He pointed down the street where a dark, foul-smelling mound blocked the way. The beast lay in relatively dignified repose, other than the flies buzzing around its face, or lack thereof. It was still whole. Any trophy hunters would have found pretty quickly that toxins still coursed through its dead body. Professor Shaw would be upset, though. Jianzu would need to come up with a cover story and a convincing amount of hush money to keep the man's anger from casting suspicion. A brief scraping noise came from the house to his right. There was someone inside. Jianzu dismounted and approached the darkened building. Sir? Saifu whispered. Going alone is a bad idea. Jianzu waved him off. Patrol the street. He slipped inside, contouring against the door frame rather than standing fully in the entrance, where he would be outlined by sunlight. Judging by the long tables and how backless and low backless stools, the building was some kind of inn or tavern. It made him furious again that these outlaws had enjoyed enough peace in these mountains to build gathering places and sell each other wine. Jianzu walked around the tavern's counter. He found the person who made the noise. It was a man sitting on a pile of pillows. He was muscled and scarred like a fighter, though it would seem he fared poorly in his last outing. One of his legs was wrapped in cloth and splinted up to his hip. The injured man stared at Jianzu with the empty, wary expression of being caught out. Jianzu noticed empty bottles within his arm's reach, jars of half-eaten food. He pieced it together. Yeah, he pieced it together. The inhabitants of the settlement had evacuated some days ago, probably scared away by the Shirshu. The ambush at the base of the mountain had been a rear guard. Yeah, the ambush at the base of the mountain had been a rear guard, or a bunch of greedy opportunists who'd lagged behind. This man with a broken leg couldn't make the journey down at all, so his companions left him here to recover. Jianzu's eyes went to a small, out-of-place vase. It had a moon peach blossom in it. "I'm looking for a girl," he said to his recuperating friend. "She was here at some point. Very tall girl. Taller than you or me. Pretty face, freckles, doesn't speak much. Have you seen her?" The man's eyebrows twitched. It could have been an attempt to conceal the truth, or it could have been his memory sparking but failing to light. She would have been accompanied by a firebender. Another girl, black hair, military bearing. Jianzu caught the spear hand strike, aimed at his throat, and redirected it into the nearby shelf, smashing the uprights. The man could add a broken wrist to his troubles. Jianzu watched him seethe in pain. Hold on. Yeah, the man could add a broken wrist to his troubles. Jianzu watched him seethe in pain. The injured fighter tucked his bad hand under his good arm. "I am Four Shadows Guan," he gnarled with pride, "and I will tell you nothing. I know a man of the law when I see one." Jianzu believed him. One of these types told... Jianzu believed him. Once these types told you their professional name, there was no more rational conversation to be had. He would try one more tactic, a play on the Dao Fei's emotions. He plucked the moon peach blossom from its vase and twirled the stem between his fingers, his thumb and forefinger. "Times have changed," he said. "In my younger days, I remember tracking this small group around the edges of the desert, from watering hole to watering hole. The band of the Scorpion, they call themselves. There couldn't have been more than a dozen members." Jianzu caught what he was looking for. The man snorting in derision at a brotherhood that small, which meant his group was much larger. "The funny thing was, when I caught up with them, I found out why they were moving so slowly," he went on. "Two of their members had caught foot rot and couldn't walk. The others fashioned litters and carried them through the desert. The whole time, the group would have escaped me if they had left their sick behind, but they chose to stay together. They chose brotherhood. He crushed the flower. That's what followers of the code used to be like. When I look at you, abandoned by your sworn brothers, I don't see that tradition. I don't see honor. Jianzu said a flying gob of spit. Uh, Jianzu let a flying gob of spit hit him in the face. The other brothers of the Autumn Bloom are willing to die for each other. The yeah, the brothers of the Autumn Moon. Yeah, the brothers of the Autumn Bloom are willing to die for each other, the man said, wiping his lips. You would never understand. Our cause makes us. He paused, realizing that Jianzu was manipulating him. Foreshadow's Guan was smarter than he looked. He clenched his jaw and slammed back against his makeshift bed rest. Jianzu grimaced and rolled up his sleeves. So much for doing this the easy way. He stepped into the sunlight and wiped his hands on a nearby saddle blanket that had been hung up to dry and forgotten. The Autumn Bloom, he thought to himself. The Autumn Bloom. Who in the name of Oma's bastard children were the Autumn Bloom? Jianzu really was getting too old. He had never heard of this gang before. He, the man who'd once single-handedly kept half the continent from falling into lawlessness, had led a new criminal outfit large large enough to populate a good-sized village operate without shouting distance of the within shouting distance of the capital. Wait, yeah, let me say it again. Ugh, fucking gross. Yeah, that's fucking a motorcycle, I think. Or the cars with the modified engines, jeez. Ugh. Anyway. He, the man who once single-handedly kept half the continent from falling into lawlessness, had led a new criminal outfit large enough to populate a good-sized village operate within shouting distance of the capital. The Autumn Bloom, whoever they were and whatever their goals, had a level of organization high enough to evacuate the settlement the moment they suspected an intrusion. And most importantly, the only thing that was important was that they now held the Avatar in their clutches. The girl had been here at some point, that was certain. She must have planned to hide in the remote mountains and fall into an ambush, like he nearly did. She'd been captured and taken to this headquarters. Shirshu followed living sense, and the animal would not have come here if she were dead. Jianzu cursed the spirits and mankind alike, cursed the threads of fate that had formed this knot. The Avatar had been kidnapped by Dao Fei. He threw his head back and stared at the sky for answers. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched a bird fly away, its long tail plumage trailing behind it like a streamer. Some obscure cultures read the future through the patterns of winged creatures. Jianzu wondered if that if that would have worked. If birds could have found the girl at birth and saved them this trouble. He heaved a great sigh. Saifu, yeah, Saifu. I've been saying his name a little wrong the whole time. I've been saying Saifu, when it's Saiful, with an L at the end. Saiful rounded the corner and came back into the street, trotting back over his boss. Did you find anything inside, sir? Just a corpse. He looked at the young swordsman. Saiful, along with a handful of other men, had answered Jianzu's call for more fighters after the encounter with Tagaka. Hold on. Yeah, Saiful, along with a handful of other men, had answered Jianzu's call for more fighters after the encounter with Tagaka left the ranks of his guard depleted, perhaps a little too quickly and conveniently, now that he thought about it. Saiful, I didn't tell you to send a message with one of her hawks, Jianzu said. The young man looked surprised. I was, relaying ahead for supplies, he said. His hand drifted toward his weapon. Yeah, he said. His hand drifted toward his weapon. He was a capable warrior, unafraid to kill for pay. A mercenary who swore loyalty as long as the wages were good. When you got right down to it, there was really no difference between him and Dao Fei. But lying was something he needed more practice at. You're from the Eastern Peninsula, aren't you? Jiandu said. He clasped his hands behind his back. I have a good friend who does a lot of business in the Eastern Peninsula. His name is Hui. Have you met him before by chance? Perhaps he was the one you relayed. Perhaps he was the one you relayed for supplies just now. It had Yeah, it had only been a twinge of suspicion on Jiantu's part, a bluff really, but mentioning Hui's name, Hui's name let loose a flood of tells from Saiful's face and body language. Let me guess, Jiantu said, digging deeper along this productive seam of ore. Hui sent you to infiltrate my household, didn't he? With orders to find out what happened to the Avatar. The slight step backward Saiful took let Jianzu know that he'd struck upon the truth. And being the smart young man you are, you realize the implication of the Shushu trail ending here, the Avatar. And let's be clear, we have been following the Avatar, has been lost to outlaws. That was the message you sent to Hui just now. Saiful was astonished that Jianzu had performed the supernatural feat of reading his mind. Really, all Jianzu had done was follow lines of information as they unfolded, like any good Pai Sho player. The swordsman decided to follow a gambit of his own. He'd been found out, but they were in the isolated mountains and he had his weapon and used youthful reflexes on his side. He rarely drew his Dao again. Jianzu rolled his neck, his joints creakier than in years past. The thing about Pai Sho was that most games didn't need to be played to completion. Masters usually recognized when they were beaten and resigned when the action was still technically in progress. Masters usually recognized when they were beaten and resigned while the action was still technically in progress. If this dance between him and Hui had taken place in the grid, then right here would be where Jianzu was supposed to pick. Then right here would be where Jianzu was supposed to bow and pick up his tiles in defeat. There was no stopping the message from reaching Hui now that the bird was in the air. The Chamberlain would realize how big a mess he was hiding and assemble a case against him to the rest of the sages of the Earth Kingdom. If the girl was found alive and her identity proven, she'd be delivered straight into the hands of Hui, who in the end wouldn't care which version of the Avatar he got, so long as he was taking it from Jianzu. By all logical reasoning, he was ruined. He'd lost. But what only his close Pai Sho partners knew about him was that Jianzu had never surrendered a game early in his life. On the rare occasions when an opponent got the best of him, he forced them to play out the lines to the bitter end. He made them jump hurdles for every piece of his they captured, and ran the late night candles down to their last inches of wick out of sheer spite. Jianzu smiled grimly as he closed in on the young swordsman. Beating him always required a price of blood. He wasn't about to drop that habit now. And that is the end of that chapter. Poor swordsman. He was just doing what he was told. Alright, so the next chapter is called Questions and Meditations. Alright, questions and meditations. Alright. F in chat, boys. F in chat. Alright. So now, yes, questions and meditations. Kyoshi kept pace behind Lao Gu through the streets of the market. The two of them were alone, a girl and her elderly uncle taking a relaxing stroll. Nothing out of the ordinary, except Lao Gu, when not in the presence of the rest of the flying opera company, walked with the bearing of a dragon wrapped in the clothing of a beggar. And Kyoshi was Kyoshi. Vendors in their stalls craned their necks to gawk at her as she passed. "Aren't we here to buy rice?" she muttered, feeling the pressure of so many gazes. "We passed 2 different peddlers already." "Any one of us could have done that alone," Lao Gu said. He winked at a matron sweeping her stoop. She frowned and pushed a pile of dust at him. "You're here to observe." Zegon Village was the main town that supplied food and manpower to Governor Ted's palace. Kyoshi had been impressed by its size as they walked in from the outskirts, but quickly noticed that the solidly built houses and traditional Earth Kingdom trappings were somewhat of a front. They hadn't encountered an actual person until they were well into the heart of the village. Kyoshi found it hard to believe that the outer districts were completely vacant, but she'd seen nothing to the contrary. Her eyes perked, her ears perked toward the sound of an argument. A peddler and the farmer supplying him were nearly at blows. "You can't fool me!" shouted the peddler. "I know the harvest was good this year. Why are you charging me this? What you're charging me is an outrage." The farmer gestured wildly at the straw hat in his hand. "And I'm telling you, most of it gets confiscated by the governor's silos. I have to set the price based on the grain I have left over." "How can you keep raising prices when there's an ocean of rice sitting behind his walls?" The peddler was beside himself. "For Yang Chen's sake, I can see the roof of the storehouse from here. Tad hasn't opened the silos for over 5 years. You might as well consider that food eaten by the spirits." Lao Gu pushed Kyoshi along. Apparently, they were not here to offer solutions to people who needed them. She knew what he was trying to prove. That Tez's impending death was justified. Reserving food for an emergency isn't foolish or corrupt. Oh yeah, that is the same issue. Yeah, she knew what she knew what he was trying to prove. That Tez's impending death was justified. Reserving food for an emergency isn't foolish or corrupt, she said. No, but secretly telling your reserves for off the books profit is. To enrich himself, Ted has traded away the grain he's collected every year since he was appointed governor. He pers- he's persist he's persisted during bad harvests when his citizens. Hold on. Let me say that again. No, but secretly selling your reserves for off the books profit is to enrich himself. To enrich himself, Tad has traded away the grain he's collected every year since he was appointed governor. He's persisted during bad harvests when his citizens have gone hungry. When his citizens have gone hungry enough to abandon their homes. Most famines are man-made, and he is on the verge of making one. Laku kicked a pebble in at a shuttered window. There was no response to the noise. "Tell me, has Jianzu ever failed his people in this manner?" Kyoshi was forced to admit that Yokia had only grown and prospered since Jianzu planted his flag there. The townsfolk she'd seen in Zigon had the sinking, harried look of men and women running out of time. They weren't starving yet, but they would be soon. She recognized the weight of hunger on their shoulders, the same one she'd felt on hers when she went from door to door in Yokia after being dumped there. Rejected in turn by every family, her options dwindling. She immediately knew what would happen next to the villagers, how their humanity would break down, as starvation and helplessness took over. How it felt to watch death encroach a little closer every week. It had taken an intervention by Kelsang to save her from that fate. Now Lagu was claiming that Now Lagu was claiming to be that mercy for Zigan, for hundreds of people instead of just one girl. she had no reason to call him wrong. It was a long, serpentine hike up the hillside to their encampment. She noted the, she noticed the Flying Opera Company preferred elevated positions, maybe her mother's influence seeping through. It made perfect sense in this context. The rocky terrain hid them from view, and from this high up, they could see the layout of Tez Palace as clearly as a well drawn map. The governor is tactically incompetent to not have scouts monitoring these passes, Kyoshi thought, before noticing the strange mix of Rangi and Lagu that had rubbed off on her. Lek looked up from stoking the campfire. Did you get the rice? We got sweet potato. She tossed the burlap sack into the ground. Rice is an issue. I'm sick of sweet potato, he groused. Kyoshi ignored him and climbed higher into the flat outcropping, where Karima and Rangi lay on their stomachs, surveying the palace. They'd come to a temporary truce over their mutual appreciation for intelligence gathering. Casting a joint was pretty much the same thing as casing a joint was pretty much the same thing as planning an assault. She sat down behind them, unnoticed. We're looking at a traditional Sihei-1. Yeah, we're looking at a traditional Sihei-1 design dating back to the Hao line of Earth Kings, Rangi said to Karima, fixated on the complex below. It was an ancient compared to the mansion back in Yokia. There were 4 courtyards instead of 2, and instead of being walled by rooms in continuous, smooth construction, it appeared as if more than a dozen houses of varying sizes and heights had been placed end to end along the square patterns drawn into the ground. The ancient owners must have grown in wealth over time, adding more and more extensions haphazardly. A far cry from the singular vision Jianzu had in constructing his own home. It was still obscenely extravagant, especially when compared to the declining village of Zigan. One of the courtyards held a gaudy turtle duck pond that was too large for its surroundings. Kyoshi knew that was a new trend in imitation of the Fire Nation royal palace. There's overlapping fields of view for the guards. There's overlapping fields of view for the guards in each of the high points, Rangi said. She pointed at 3 lumps of roof to the closest edge. She pointed at 3 lumps of roof on the closest edge. We have to assume they'll be fully manned, so coming at the best angle, that's 3 sentries we'll have to deal with on the approach. Lek can drop 2 of them from a distance, but the third would have time to sound the alarm. Let me say that again. Lek can drop 2 of them from a distance, but the third would have time to sound the alarm, Karima said. How do you know so much about old Earth Kingdom architecture? In the academy, we studied how to attack any kind of fortification, Rangi said. Walled fire, temples, Earth Kingdom stockades. Karima looked at her carefully. Polar ice walls? Yes, Rangi said without hesitation. Preparedness carries the day. There was even a plan for Ba Sing Se, though I'd pity the troops who carried it out. The waterbender set aside the comments made toward the other nations. Mach will want to attack the south gate directly, Krema said. If we time our approach with his, we could assume the sentries posted on the other walls will divert toward him. Yeah, foreshadowing, man. Yeah, when I read that, I'm just like, whoa. All right. All right. Yeah, the waterbender set aside the comments made toward the other nations. Mach will want, Mach will want to attack the south gate directly, Karima said. If we time our approach with his, we would assume the sentries posted on the other walls will divert toward him. Rangi frowned. That's a killing field. The ground south of the complex was hard. Uh, that's a killing field. The ground south of the complex was hard packed dirt strewn dirt strewn with field stones the size of a man's head. A few earthbenders in Tesgard could cause massive casualties. I don't think Mach cares, Karima said. I don't know what poison. Hold on. Yeah, I don't think Mach cares, uh, Karima said. I don't know what poison Y's been pouring in the ears of his men, but they've turned into fanatics. He's going to reach the walls with sheer numbers. Kyoshi shuddered to think of the slaughter that would follow if the Dao Fei succeeded. She never heard of a siege where the attackers didn't repay the cost. She never heard of a siege where the attackers didn't repay the cost of victory and blood. We have one last option, Karima said. We still don't know which building the prison cells are in or under. Capturing the entire palace might be the only way we get enough time to search for the person we're trying to free. So instead of trying to penetrate the compound, we simply take out the watchman on the south wall, open the gate from the inside, and let Mach stroll right through. That's not going to happen, Kyoshi said. Gah! Karima launched herself to her knees and nearly fell off the outcrop. How are you so stealthy on those giant hooves of yours? Servants have to be quiet. Kyoshi appraised the pair of benders, who were probably more alike than either cared to admit. She needed some wisdom in a hurry. The conventional sort, not the turned around mind games that left the conventional sort, not the turned around mind game, not the turned around mind, not the turned around mind games of Lagu. Right now, these two women were her best sources. The last hours of daylight were devoted to more training. The training never ended. The training would invade her dreams. She was certain the next fire avatar would be born with her muscle memory imprinted in in their little fire baby limbs. Let's go already, Wong shouted. You're the one who wants to learn dust stepping. Are you sure about this? Kyoshi said, justifiably nervous. When I saw the rest of you do it, you started on solid ground and worked your way higher. That seems a lot safer. She perched on a rock column, one of many that studded a ravine. The distance between each pillar was at least 12 feet. Jesus. On the far side of the gully, Wang waited for her. Practice, practice should be more difficult than the real thing, he said. The goal is to reach me without slowing down. If you stumble, you have to go back to where you started and try again. You're doing it 3 times. Kyoshi peered down at the ground below. There was nothing that would break her fall from the hard stone floor. Can I at least use my fans? I don't know, Wang said. Can you? She pulled her weapons from her belt. The heft in her hands was comforting as she spread them open. She had the thought that maybe if she flapped hard enough, she could take to the air like a bird. Either shoot or go hungry, Lek called out. She must have went for it without hesitating. She should have went for it without hesitating. Now she'd drawn an audience. The entire group, including Lao Gu, watched from various seats around the camp. Precision, she thought to herself. Timing, precision, timing. She leaped into thin air. In the same instant, pebbles and dust rose from the bottom of the ravine, stacking on each other, solidifying into a rigid structure that only needed to support her weight long enough for her to take her next step. She felt the ball in her foot land gratefully on the miniature temporary stalagmite. She felt the ball of her foot land gracefully on the miniature temporary stalagmite, the fragile tower of Earth. Then she crashed right through it. She dropped like, a stone. In her panic, Kyoshi let go of her fans and reached for the column with her hands, a drowning victim ready to pull the entire lifeboat under the surface with her. She struck the side and bounced off, scrambling for the top of the column with her fingers, but unable to find any purchase. Her back collided with the formation behind her. Hold on. Yeah, she struck the side and bounced off, scrabbling for the top of the column with her fingers, but unable to find any purchase. Her back collided with the formation behind her, sending her pinwheeling face first into the bottom of the ravine. She lay there, a smear along the ground. 2 thuds sounded, her fans landing after her. She had a distinct feeling, mostly because she was still alive, that someone had earthbent the ground under her to be softer, covered the rock with a layer of sand. Her guess was Lagu. 0, she heard Wang call out. Start over. Every attempt at dust stepping failed, painfully. It was so bad that Rangi relented and let Karima try teaching her to use water as a support instead of earth. That meant Kyoshi still ended up sprawling on the ground, only wetter. Maybe you should sit the mission out, Lek said after a particularly brutal fall. For once, he was speaking out of genuine concern instead of taunting her. I don't think we can, Karima said. The only decent plans we came up with require all of us working together. I think there's a way we can make use of Kyoshi's raw power, Lao Gu said. He hadn't offered any opinions on the matter until now. She may she may be she may be a hammer on a team of scalpels, but sometimes a brute force approach is necessary. I'll babysit her on the raid. Kyoshi almost had to admire the way the old man spun events into the patterns he desired. A weaver looking at raw flax and seeing the cloth it would become. Maybe that would be for the best, she said. We can keep each other out of trouble. Each night, Kyoshi looked at the moon growing fuller. Each night, Kyoshi looked at the moon growing fuller, as if it were gorging on her dread. The date of the raid grew nearer and nearer, and the mood around the camp turned grim. Roles had been determined, rehearsals walked through using props of nuts and loose coins laid, laid on diagrams traced in the ground. The gnawing in Kyoshi's stomach had little to do with hunger, and cold sweat kept her awake no matter her distance from the campfire or how close Rangi slept near her. On the bright side, the two most useless members of the group, being paired up, gave Kyoshi and Laogu plenty of time to talk in private. Okay. Haven't you wondered why Mok's goal isn't to kill Governor Te? Laogu said, moments after he ordered her to sit and meditate with him. The thought had crossed Kyoshi's mind. He knows you're going to do it? Laogu laughed. And I used to believe you didn't have a sense of humor. No. The reason is that he has the same piece of information I do. Palaces built in the Hao period often had an iron safe room hidden in their depths. In case of an attack, the lord of the manor would flee there and lock himself behind impenetrable metal doors. Well, impenetrable until 300 years after this. Then they're not impenetrable anymore. But yes. In case of an attack, the lord of the manor would flee there and lock himself behind impenetrable metal doors. Fuck you, door. Yeah. Fucking Toph is just... Toph's amazing. Yeah. In case of an attack, the lord of the manor would flee there and lock himself behind impenetrable metal doors. The vaults had supplies to last a month, which was more than enough for reinforcements to arrive. Mok knows trying to kill the governor would be a waste of effort. The more Kyoshi heard about this Tad person, the more she despised him. She opened her eyes. He's going to abandon his household to an army of Dao Fei? What did you expect from a wealthy official? Laogu said. You sound disappointed. Perhaps you assumed Te would stride onto the field of battle at great risk to himself and fight off Mok's forces single-handedly with an incredible display of earthbending, protecting scores of innocent lives? I don't know where you got that image from. Her hackles rose. It seemed like the old man never let an opportunity to sing Jianzu's praises. It's what I would do. Yeah. Yeah, her hackles rose. It seemed like the old man never let an opportunity to sing Jianzu's praises go by. She tried to calm herself by returning to her meditation. Kyoshi had been denied access to this kind of training in Yokia, but Rangi had found moments to teach her the basics on their journey. With their bloody task looming over her head, she found the practice calming, centering. She was like cool stone. She was like cool stone deep below the. So you're telling me you've never wondered. Sorry. So you're telling me you've never wondered about my age? Now he was trying to goad her on purpose. It was astounding how easily he flipped from the hypnotic, terrifying vision she knew he could be into an oafish into an oafish. Oops, let me say that again. I got like distracted and. It was astounding how easily he flipped from the hypnotic, terrifying vision she knew he could be into an oafish child with wrinkles and white hair. She was wrong to have thought that calling him Sifu a few times could have given her consistent, uninterrupted access to a girl of death. I can't say that I have. I can't say that I have, Kyoshi muttered through her teeth. She sounded. He sounded slightly wounded by. He sounded slightly wounded by her lack of interest in his secrets. It's just the people who've openly confronted me in the past with the name Ti Guai, the Immortal. To a man, they, to a man, they all begged me for the secrets of longevity. The only ones who didn't were you and your mother. First, she didn't believe. First, she didn't believe he was anywhere near as old as he claimed, and second, desperately grasping for more power and control over life was what people like Jianzu did. Ted, too, probably. Sifu, she drawled. Oh, please, impart upon me the mysteries of immortality, for I wish to watch arrows pass before my eyes, like the grains of an hourglass. Yeah, that's why she's gonna get it. Yep. Yeah. Typical mystical stuff. Yep. Yeah, but let me say it again. Sifu, she drawled. Oh, please, impart upon me the mysteries of immortality, for I wish to watch eras pass before my eyes, like the grains of an hourglass. Of course, Lao Gu said brightly. Anything for my dear student. You see, it all comes down to maintaining order, keeping things neat, clean, and tidy. Excuse me? This was genuinely offensive to Kyoshi. As a former housekeeping servant, she'd let go of her standards for cleanliness the first morning outside of Yokia, after waking up covered in Ping Ping's shed fur. But with his drinking and aversion, but with this, but with his drinking and aversion to changing clothes, Laokyu towed the line of rancidity. What did he know about tidying up? Aging is really just your body falling apart. Aging is really just your body falling apart. On the smallest, most invisible levels, and neglecting to put it back. Yeah, let me say that again. Aging is just your body falling apart on the smallest, most invisible levels, and neglecting to put itself back together, he said. With the right mental focus, you could take an with the right mental focus, you can take an inventory of your own body and place a little piece That's not where it should be. Back into the correct order. Kyoshi had to assume he was tailoring his lessons to her. Kyoshi had to assume he was tailoring his lessons to her background, and that the real process was much more complicated. The way you describe it, you'd have to decide what version of yourself you'd be stuck as forever. Exactly! Those who grow live and die. The stagnant pool is immortal, while the clear flowing river dies an uncountable number of deaths. Is that another proverb of Shokun's? Because it doesn't sound like any spiritual lesson I've had. It's my proverb, Lao Gu whined. It's my proverb, Lao Gu whined, his feelings hurt again. All this fretting about spirits. I'm trying to teach you about the mind. An infinite world that's been neglected by far too many explorers. The mind. Kyoshi's mind drifted to another existence. The one where she was sitting happily across from Kelsang in a green field as she told her about the wonders of the spirit world. His warm and gentle voice guiding her consciousness while they crossed the boundary, hand in hand, to a land where human concerns couldn't weigh them down. She'd lost that. She'd lost him and the sickness that followed that would never fully heal. Kelsang's absence had put her in stasis. If Lao Gu wanted her to be stagnant and forever trapped, she'd already mastered the lesson. Kyoshi looked at the substitute who sat before her. The strange joke she got instead of her true teacher. It was an exchange poor enough to make her weep. Spirit creatures are more interesting than metal riddle. Spirit creatures are more interesting than mental riddles, she said. My dear, Lao Gu said softly, as you'll discover one day, the mind has specters of its own. And that is the end of that chapter. Okay, this will be the last chapter. Yeah, last chapter. Alright, next chapter is called The Face of Tradition. The Face of Tradition. The time had come. The moon was full bursting. It spilled its light over the field surrounding Ted's palace, sharpening corners and altering colors in ghostly detail. Mok knew enough to schedule his raid when his men could see what they were doing. The flying opera company picked its way down the rocky hillside. Does everyone know the plan? Rengi said. She was asking as a formality. Rengi had drilled each step into their skulls. It had been satisfying to see the others get a measure of Fire Nation discipline as revenge for what they'd put Kyoshi through. Going to see Mok before the assault was part of the operation. If he let them move as they pleased, and did not let his temper and vanity reign, then, with luck on their side, they would deliver him exactly what he wanted. One prisoner, unharmed. Ted's foolishness was on full display as they approached Mok's encampment south of the palace. Kyoshi counted at least 500 Dao Fei preparing for battle, sharpening their swords and honing their spear thrusts. None of Tez's household guard Had none of Ted's household guard noticed this many armed men converging on his location, Jiangsu would have smothered this miniature uprising before it. She shook her head. For one night, and for one night only, Jiangsu was immaterial. They tiptoed by a large group of bare-chested men, arranged in neat rows, deep in horse stance, chanting gibberish in unison. Their captain, their captain walked along among them, holding a bundle of Their captain walked among them, holding a bundle of lit incense sticks in his hands. He ritualistically swept the smoking ends. He ritualistically swept them smoking ends to cover to ends over their torsos, leaving trails of ash on their skin. Kyoshi Kyoshi looked closer and saw that each man had the characters for impervious inked on their forehead. Who are they? She whispered to her companions. Those are the members of Kang Shen sect, Kirima said. They're non-benders who believe that performing secret purification ceremonies will make them immune to the elements. Mock must have recruited a bunch to serve as his front line. That's madness, Kyoshi said. If they charge straight into the formation of earthbenders, they're going to be slaughtered. The men she saw had no armors, no shields. Many of them seemed to be empty-handed fighters, lacking a weapon entirely. It's amazing what the mind can be led to believe, Lao Gu said. Especially if we're desperate, Lek muttered. They say that people turn to the Kang Chen sect. They say that people turn to the Kang Shen sect after seeing a friend or a loved one killed by a bender. Yep. Yeah, they say that people turn to the Kang. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's gnarly. That's like super fucking metal, man. I can't imagine. Ugh. It is cool. Okay. They say that people turn to the Kang Shen sect after seeing a friend or a loved one killed by a bender. To be made to feel powerless that way, and you'll do anything that gives you courage. They approached the center of the camp. Mock was easy to spot. He'd set up he'd set up a fancy wooden desk in the middle of the outdoors that served no purpose other than to show he could. He sat behind it with his fingers tented, as if he were the governor of these parts and not Ted. Y stood next to him, a nightmarish imitation of a secretary. My beloved associates, Mock said after they bowed. Come closer. They glanced at each other nervously and shuffled toward the desk. Closer still, Mock said. They crowded around him. Kyoshi noticed Lek was on the flank, in the most danger. His head was low and still. She regretted not standing between him and the Dao Fei leader. I didn't get the chance to bid you farewell in Hujiang, Mock said. You missed the excitement. He stared pointedly at Rangi and Kyoshi. There was no evidence to link them to the Shirshu attack, but a man like him wouldn't need it. There were the pieces that didn't fit, and that was enough. A great beast came on the morning you left, he continued. It killed several of my best men. What do the two of you have to say about that? Why drew his knife before Kyoshi could answer? It was LoK, brave, stupid LoK, who either never learned or was too selfless for his own good, who spoke up for her again. We don't know anything about that, Uncle. Kyoshi and Rangi aren't to blame. Why lunged? Certainly, certainly lent, certainly lent Kyoshi a speed she never knew she hadn't. Certainly lent Kyoshi a speed. I feel like the sentence is incomplete, but I think it's just the sentence itself that's just weird. Yeah, certainly lent Kyoshi. Yeah, certainly lent Kyoshi a speed she never knew she had. I feel like there was something that was supposed to be in the sentence, but it might be just a typo, or just might be a good like a. I don't know. The sentence doesn't feel like it's complete. Yeah, but why lunged? Certainly lent Kyoshi speed she never knew she had. In one swift motion, she caught Y's knife hand before it reached LoK, pinned it to the desk by her wrist, and drew her fan with her other. She kept the heavy weapon closed as she smashed. She kept the heavy weapon closed as she smashed it like a hammer on Y's fingers, breaking them in a single blow. The knife clattered to the ground. The eyes of the flying opera company were as big and wide as the moon overhead. Kill, Uncle. Yeah, hopefully she does that next, but I don't know. She just. She just beat down his servant. Yeah, she kept the heavy weapon closed as she smashed. Kill. Kill. Hold on, hold on. Yeah, the knife clattered to the ground. The eyes of the flying opera company were as big and wide as the moon overhead. Everyone was shocked into silence, including Y, who seemed numbered by sheer who seemed numbed by sheer disbelief from the pain coursing up his arm. Forgive me, uncles, Kyoshi said, finding it supremely easy to speak now. I saw a poisonous insect and thought to save your lives. Y clutched his arm. Y clutched his broken hand and bared his teeth at Kyoshi, a vine cobra about to spit. She was still calm. But if Uncle Y believes my actions inappropriate, he can always teach me the meaning of discipline on the Lei Tai after our mission is over. Mock leaned back in his chair and crowed with laughter. So much progress in only a few weeks. This is the influence I have on people. Come, Kyoshi. Since your brothers and sisters have had their tongues stolen by a spirit, tell me what plans you've come up with since we last saw each other. She carried on as if nothing had happened, ignoring the surprise of her friends and the fury of why. She'd heard the strategizing between Rangi and Karima enough times to be convincing. We believe the prison is where our sworn brother is being held below the northeast courtyard. Assuming it was constructed at the same time as the oldest part of the palace, we should be able to defeat the security. He noticed her paused. She noticed her pause. But provided we have enough time. Provided we have enough time, if Ted's guards choose to defend the prison, our group alone may never be able to spring our man. There is also a chance that if we show our hand too early, they realize what we're doing and preemptively kill the hostage. Then it's as I anticipated, Mock said, stroking his chin like a wise man. We'll need a direct attack in concert with your clandestine efforts. Hold on. Then it says A anticipated, Mock said, stroking his chin like a wise man. We'll need to direct attack. We'll need a direct attack in concert with your clandestine efforts. Kyoshi had to give him some measures of credit. Yeah, uh, Kyoshi had given him some measure of credit. He did foresee this outcome back in Hujiang. Mock reached inside the desk and pulled out 2 sticks of timing incense. Kyoshi watched him pluck. Kyoshi watched him pluck Y's knife off the ground and carefully cut them to the same length before handing them to Rangi. If you would, my lovely. She lit both tips with one finger and handed them back to Mock. Get to your positions, he said. We attack in 1 hour. The flying opera company bowed and got out of there as fast as they could. Step one had passed. Step one had been passed. Rangi cradled the timing incense as they left the camp, trying to shield it from the breezes that might accelerate the burn or throw them off schedule. 1 hour, Kyoshi thought. In the distance, a few bright lights from the palace could be seen. In the distance, a few bright lights from the palace could be seen. The fires lit by servants like her for cooking. The fires lit by servants like her for cooking and warmth. Let me say that again. In the distance, a few bright lights from the palace could be seen. The fires lit by servants like her from cooking and warmth. Lanterns carried by guards, like the watchman who always greeted her kindly at the gates of Jianzi's mansion. She looked at the Kangshen acolytes. Yeah, she looked at the King Shen acolytes working themselves into a frenzy, vulnerable, naked, but for their faith, and naked, but for their faith. 1 hour until blood was spilled. Steady on, Lao Gu whispered to her. His words meant to be comfort. His words, meant to be comfort, only reminded her. 1 hour became 1 hour until she became the killer she was trying to be. Lek, Karima, and Wong hustled them back. Yeah, Lek, Karima, and Wong hustled them back to camp. What's the rush? Rangi said, covering the dwindling stick of incense. There's no reason to be hasty at this point. She and Kyoshi were already wearing their armor. We have to put on our faces, Karima said. She rummaged around her limited belongings. It's tradition before a job. Luck failed to find what he was looking for and grunted. I forgot. I forgot we left Chameleon Bay in a hurry, he said. I'm out. Does anyone else have some makeup they can spare? Kyoshi blinked, having difficulty comprehending. I do? I think there was some in my mother's trunk, along with the fans. Kyoshi makeup origin! Hell yeah! Wong helped himself to Kyoshi's rucksack until he found a large kit of makeup that had been completely neglected until now. It, it would be a disgrace for an opera troupe to perform barefaced, and stupid for thieves to not hide their identities. Kyoshi remembered. Kyoshi remembered. Classical opera was performed by actors wearing certain patterns of makeup that corresponded with stock characters. The tiger monkey spirit, a popular trickster hero, always had a black cleft of paint running down his orange face. Purple meant sophistication and culture, and often appeared on wise mentor types. Her mother's journal had mentioned her mother's journal had mentioned the makeup, but she overlooked it in favor of the more practical fans and the headdress. Didn't she have a headdress too? Wong brought the kit to her and opened it. It looks like the good stuff from Bossing Say, so it hasn't dried out, he said. I'll do yours first. It takes practice to put on your own face correctly. Kyoshi shuddered at the thought of the oily paste on her skin, but decided not to complain. Wait a second, she said. There's nothing but red and white. There's nothing in here but red and white. The indentations that should have held an assortment of colors had been filled multiple times over with deep crimson and an eggshell colored pigment. There was a small amount of black hole as well, but not enough to cover the whole face. Those are the colors, Wong said as he dipped his thumb and began to gently apply the makeup to her cheeks. White symbolizes treachery, a sinister nature suspicion of others, and the willingness to visit evil deeds upon them. And the willingness to visit evil deeds upon them. Kyoshi could hear Rangi snort so loudly, Tam might have heard it. Yeah, Kyoshi heard Rangi snort so loudly, Tam might have heard it in his palace. But, Wong said, scooping the other side of the case with his forefinger. Red symbolizes honor, loyalty, heroism. This is the face that we show our sworn brothers and sisters. The red is the trust we have for each other, buried in the field of white, but always showing through our gaze. Kyoshi closed her eyes and let him put more paint on. Done, Wong said. He smoothed the last of the black eyeliner on her brow and stepped back to examine his handiwork. I can't promise that it won't stop a sharp rock or an arrow, but I can guarantee you'll feel braver. It always does for me. Lean down, Karima said. She'd pilfered the headdress out of Kyoshi's bag while her eyes were closed. You're wearing your mother's face, so you should wear her crown as well. Kyoshi lowered her head so that Karima could place the band around it. She never tried on the headdress before. It fit like it had been made for her. She rose to her full weight. She rose to her full height. How do I look? She asked. Wong held up a tiny mirror that had been nestled in the lid of the makeup kit, while Rangi angled the glow of incense she could see. The glass wasn't wide enough to display the entire face, just a slash of reflection running down the arc of gold atop her brow, across her flaring eye, and over the corner of her reddened mouth. The narrow mirror resembled a tear. Yeah, the narrow mirror resembled a tear in the veil of the universe. I know. Yeah, the narrow mirror resembled a tear in the veil of the universe, and from the land that lay beyond the other side, a powerful inter Ugh, I hate when this happens. Hold on just 1 second. Alright. The narrow mirror resembled a tear in the veil of the universe, and the land lay beyond, and from the land that lay beyond the other side, a powerful, imperturbable, eternal being stared back at Kyoshi, a being that could pass as an avatar someday. I'm not thrilled you're wearing Dao Fei colors, Rangi said, biting her lip as she smiled. But you look beautiful. You look terrifying, Lek added. A lifetime ago, Kyoshi had never thought she could be either of those things, then it's perfect. And that is the end. And that, yeah, that is the end of that chapter. Hell yeah. Makeup origin. Oh, yeah. But yes, thank you so much for listening, you guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.